Hello. Today I am going to be making Rice Crispie cakes to fuel your ride. I'm going to go on a bike ride tomorrow, probably maybe 2 or 3 hours. I've got Haribo, I've got drink mix, but I want something to eat that is solid, and I'm going to show you just how quick and easy it is to make these. All you need, 3 ingredients: rice bubbles or Cocoa Pops, marshmallows, and butter. You can also use coconut oil if you prefer. I personally don't use coconut oil when I'm cooking very often. And yeah, super simple to make. So I'm going to show you how we're going to make them. You need 300 grams of marshmallows, and then you need 200 grams of rice bubbles and 50 grams of butter. So I generally don't measure things. I know that this is about 100 grams of butter. So I'm going to start with the butter in my saucepan. We should have opened my rice bubbles earlier. That would have been a good start. But I've just come off the back of a workshop I was doing with some other people in my team about nutrition for cycling. If you're interested, the workshop webinar is available to watch on my website for all my team members. So if I get a container and weigh it. So I'm going to need 200 grams of rice bubbles here. So I've got my scales. Actually move so you can see what I'm doing down here. So go to tar. One of the tricks you can do when you've got scales is you go to tar, go to 0, and I'm going to need 200 grams of these, which is probably going to end up being basically 2 of these sort of containers. So I'll do a second one of that in a minute. But I'll start with the marshmallows and melting the butter and the marshmallows. I find when you are cooking this, using a spatula tends to work a little bit easier to cook and to avoid it being sticky, because it is going to get sticky. So what I can actually do, I'm going to melt the butter first, and then I'll literally put the entire packet of marshmallows into the frying pan, into the saucepan as well. So you can use vegan marshmallows with this. It does also work. I've had someone recently use vegan marshmallows. It does get the same stick ability. Obviously, that's not a technical term, but I find if you're using, you kind of want to use a bit of a low heat on your frying pan, because when you're in your pot, because the sugar and the butter can burn if you have it on too high a temperature. So let's see if I can put my screen up a little bit higher so you can see a little bit better. There we go. So, all right, there we go. So we've got our marshmallows in there, and if you see, I'll put you a bit closer, it's going to start getting relatively sticky quite quickly, and it starts to melt, especially if the temperature is really high. Probably got my temperature on a little bit too high in this situation, but you just keep melting the marshmallows down until it gets to basically one big consistent runny marshmallow fluff. It's kind of like marshmallow fluff is kind of the consistency that you are going for with this. Now, when you're thinking about like your ride nutrition, if you have foods that you like eating, you are much more likely to actually eat them on a bike. I would be aiming for most people to be having at least minimum 50, 60 grams of carbs an hour for a high intensity racing or any sort of sprint efforts or intervals or hill climbs. I would then be increasing the amount of carbs that you're having. You might be having 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 grams an hour, testing out what you have in training for racing if you're going to do any sort of races. And you don't just have to have one food. The longer your ride is, I would use more options and have a mixture of foods. As I said, I've got Haribo, I've got drink mix, I've got sort of other stuff in the cupboard. I've probably got some biscuits in the freezer somewhere. But the Rice Crispie cakes are fantastic because they're light, they're very energy dense, but you don't have to take, it's not going to weigh down your pockets. They are tasty. They're really, really tasty. They end up having a bit of a caramelized sort of flavor. So I find if you see my marshmallows are starting to get a little bit runnier. They're still pretty solid at the moment, but they're getting more of a runny sort of consistency, which is kind of what I'm going for. And that sugar and the butter kind of browning will give it a bit of a caramelized sort of flavor as well. So you'll see how quick and how easy this is to make. It doesn't take very long because once the marshmallow is all melted, all we have to do is add in the rice bubbles and mix it, and then basically we can put it straight into the container to like whatever container or glass container that you're going to use to cut it up with. So I've got a glass container, I've got some baking paper which I'll use to stop it from sticking, because as you'll see in a second, when I had the rice bubbles, it is going to go crazy sticky. So the marshmallows are almost melted. So I've made these a few times now, and I found that if you just, again, you cook it just that little bit extra, it starts getting more of a golden kind of color on the edges, but you don't want it to burn. So it's kind of a fine line of letting it get really sticky, and caramelize a little bit, because it just makes the most beautiful caramel flavor that you're going to really enjoy. So it's sticky, really sticky in this particular moment, but once it's cool and it's in the fridge, it isn't sticky at all. So I reckon I can probably leave that there. And as I said, this container, that's 100 grams of rice bubbles, Rice Krispies, whatever you want to call them, as it is. I know people that have then added gummy bears or chocolate chips to this recipe as well for other ingredients. The key thing here is basically when you start mixing is you want to mix fast. So let me just bring you a little bit closer and so you can see, and I will start the mixing. So this is half of the rice bubbles. This is 100 grams, and then I need to add another 100 grams. So basically another container. That'll do. That's 200 grams of rice bubbles and 300 grams of marshmallows, 50 grams of butter. So see how this is where you want to move fast, because this is where it's like the spider webs and it's crazy sticky. But once it sets, it will go really solid and start getting more into a bar sort of shape. I found the trick, in my experience, to when you're putting in your container to go into the fridge, I found that you can use the baking paper as a way to pat it down and to squish it down without it sticking to it. So I'll show you that in a second. So that's it. What time are we on? 7 minutes. 7 minutes. We've basically made our rice crispy cakes. Now let me just push it backwards and I'll get my container out. Probably just use the plain glass, but I've got some baking paper here. And put the container in here, and because the base paper is a bit too big, I'm going to cut an edge of it because I want some of this extra baking paper, because as I said, it'll stop it from sticking when you're trying to flatten it down. Because when you put it in the container, you want it to you want to work fast. This is where I'm going to end up burning myself, because see how sticky this is. So sticky at the moment. So that's hot. Okay, let's try not to burn myself in this process. That would be a bit of a pain. But yeah, so crazy sticky at the moment. I'm just going to try and dump all this in without burning myself if I can into the pot. It's probably like a 3-hand job. Oh, that's hot. The pot is super hot. Yeah, come on, get in, making a mess here. This is how not to make a mess. All right, hang on. Okay, it's already kind of starting to set, and see how that's just going to stick. It's like spider webs at this point. But if you use the baking paper, you can kind of start squishing it, because it'll let you squish it down and get it out of the container. There we go. Okay, so let me get the rest of this. Using the wrong hand. Oh, that's hot. Damn, it's hot. Oh, this is when you're left-handed, you're trying to do things left-handed and you're right-handed. Doesn't work very well. Okay, cool. Let's do this. Final try. Get it in there. crazy sticky. It's delicious though. So if you don't get it down flat pretty quickly, you'll find that you just end up with it really, it won't be as condensed and concentrated as you want it to be. All right, probably leave that as a day for that section. Yeah, as I said, you use the baking paper. It lets you pat it down. You can also use a wet knife, and basically showing you how not to do this. All right. It's already starting to set. This is something you can actually make. Maybe you need a bit more, but you need about a couple of minutes, maybe about 5 minutes for it to set once it's in the fridge. But it's already going hard, and once it's hard, then you can cut it up into pieces and put it into bars. I find when I'm cutting it into bars, I tend to use more of a longer bar shape than I would like squares. But that's my personal preference. You can cut it into whatever shape that you particularly like. But yeah, there we go. So less than 10 minutes, basically 10 minutes, and that's our Rice Krispies, marshmallows, butter, and Rice Krispies. That will go in the fridge, and in probably 10 minutes, I'll be able to cut that up, and that can be my ride food for tomorrow. So probably not find space in the fridge. But anyway, thanks for joining me on my Rice Krispie cooking adventure. I will see you next time. All right, bye.